Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Tonight's date is Monday, December 5th, 2022. And we're going to discuss tonight. We got a lot of different things to go through. We're going to go through some of the coaching stuff from around the country, including here at Ohio State as we have a coach leaving. We're going to go through the craziness that is called the transfer portal as 6 million people entered the portal today. It felt like half the world's population. And then we will get into some Ohio State news. We'll talk about JSN. I'm sure a lot of people have heard by now about that. And, we'll talk the playoffs as Ohio State with the help that they needed this weekend, USC losing on Friday. And then, obviously, TCU also lost, but it seems like that was not any really help. It was the USC loss that pushed the Ohio State through. So Ohio State is fourth, and we will be playing Georgia in the semifinals with Michigan playing TCU. So we will talk about that in the second half of the show. We'll get into the playoff stuff. First off, so we'll talk, coaching before we get to Ohio State. A lot of movement so far around the country. Big Ten, in my opinion, has gotten better. Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, Matt Rule at Nebraska. So the West is that definitely helps out the West. Get some pretty solid coaches over there. Yeah. You still have Brett at Illinois. You got to figure that he will only continue to improve over there. Pretty good start for them over there. It might be to the point, you got to think with, if Rule can get to where, he was at with Baylor, he should be able to recruit Texas. When the California school's in, I can imagine that he should be able to recruit a little bit in Southern California. And, he should be able to pull in some guys from the Midwest too. So, he could be in a very big position to where, Nebraska could be a very interesting team to possibly win a Big Ten here in a few years. And same thing with Luke at Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin's been in this game how many times, and it's like now they, seems like they really got a coach that knows how to win. He's been to a playoff. He's got a great pedigree behind him. I mean, learned under two great coaches at Ohio State between Tressel and Urban. So he gets the right type of players that he wants at Wisconsin. I mean, he really could win the Big. I mean, he could really actually put Wisconsin over the top and actually, win a Big Ten. And with the 12-team playoff coming, I could see Wisconsin making some playoffs over the next few years and stuff.
Well, I think that right there, that's the key. I mean, now's the time. Of course, this does not apply to Luke Fickell because Luke is a good man, good culture behind him, but these teams started seeing this last year when all this was, the writing was on the wall. Like, it doesn't matter if you got a poach from a big program. It doesn't matter if the guy has some baggage with him or not. If you need a coach to make your team successful, that's what you do right now because we're going to the 12-team playoff. I mean, Luke Fickell can absolutely get Wisconsin the best version of them. And there is no reason to believe that they couldn't be a playoff team. For many, for most years, Wisconsin could push a playoff. I mean, look how successful, they were with Paul Christen. There's definitely something missing with him. And I'm not saying Luke is the most complete coach, but let's call it what it is, man. He took Cincinnati to a playoff. He took a team that had no business being in the playoffs to the playoffs. And speaking of them, I know the Bearcat fans, they weren't happy that Luke left them with, a couple games left or whatever, but he missed his opportunity last year. Like, he wasn't going to let that happen again. They weren't going to make a playoff this year. So he had to strike when it was hot.
Yeah, he was, I mean, and I get it. They're going to the Big 12. They're going to a big conference, but he was loyal to the playoff team last year. They were going to the playoff. It screwed him out of Notre Dame. I mean, they got pressured. They were going to wait, and then they got scared Ohio State was going to come in and grab Marcus, and, they decided to make Marcus the head coach. And, the way Notre Dame finished the season, it seems like they probably made, as of now, I would say they made a right choice, but I would say that Luke is a better coach. I mean,
and Luke's not a Big 12 coach either. Like,
yeah,
There's fits in conferences also, and that's not him.
Yeah. I mean, even though, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, you just saw, in the Big 12 championship game, I mean, those are probably the two best defenses in the conference. And, they're definitely up there, with Iowa State and maybe, Texas here and there. But, that was a very hard hitting game on both sides. They both were scoring like, crazy. So, I mean, it's, it is what it is in the Big 12. Like, I mean,
yeah.
Your defenses are only expected to go so far, it seems like, with those. So, yeah, I think Wisconsin was a great fit for him. I mean, he's a Midwestern guy. I mean, he's from Ohio. I mean, Wisconsin and Ohio culture is not that much different. He wants to
Drink
play.
Beer, watch football, man. That's what we love.
Yeah. So he's going to, you saw the type of football he likes to play at Cincinnati. He wants a hard defense. He wants an offense that's, moves the ball, can score, but, are physical. And, he's going to get that at Wisconsin. He's going to be able to find guys, and he's going to be a threat for Ohio State and state school, because he's going to be able to come down here to Ohio and he's going to be able to be like, to that 3 or 4 star kid, even a 4-star kid that Ohio State might really like, and he's going to give them an opportunity, to come up there and, go play for Wisconsin. He could be very scary for Ohio State in the Midwest when it comes to running backs and for linemen, like in, different guys on the defense. He's a defensive minded coach. So I think, I think that he could cause a lot of fits. And probably the smartest thing he even did, especially if they can mesh, their vision of what defense is, he keeps Jim Leonard as his defensive coordinator, and, he's beloved up there. And so, I mean, so far, the fix winning right now. I mean, this is a good program. I never expected him at Wisconsin, so it was like when it happened, I was like a little blown off that, wow. I mean, I was never really thinking Wisconsin, but when you kind of think of it deep down, it's like I think it's somewhere that he could really strike really hot and be very competitive in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, if he keeps their culture of just mountains of linemen and running backs galore coming in. I mean, if, like you said, if his and Leonard's minds can mesh, I mean, that's the perfect guy to have. I know he's a defensive coach, so as long as their heads don't butt, I mean, that's a perfect guy to have, though. He relates well with them. Like, he's an alumni, they love him there, but also he knows defense. Like, Luke doesn't have to take time out of his day to make sure his defense is okay. Kind of like what, we've seen maybe with Ryan Day in the past. Like, Luke he can focus on being that CEO because he has a guy that is probably the most, maybe not the most, but one of the most trustworthy defensive coordinators in the country is working for him. Like, that is just that. I mean, that's a gift walking in the door, like that's a grand slam for him. And he just got there. So as long as he can keep their running culture going, I'm sure he adds a little bit more to it. Luke's a smart guy. He runs a hell of a program. So, yeah, it's going to be great for him. Matt Rule, I mean, I'm a little curious to see how Matt Rule does it in Nebraska. It can't be worse than Scott Frost, right? It can only get better.
I think the biggest thing that I like about that is that, Nebraska's kind of been hurt in the last few years in recruiting Texas. And I know when they left the Big 12 and all that stuff, that became a little bit more of an uphill battle. But even, Pelini was doing better in Texas than what they're doing now in Texas. And Texas is such a big high school football state. And I know you got Texas and A&M both in, the SEC. So that helps the SEC a lot. You have, Tech and TCU and Baylor there that in the Big 12. So, that keeps a lot of talent in the Big 12, but there's still a lot of talent there. And I think that his ability in years past to be able to recruit Texas will probably help Nebraska in the long run, that he can find some kids from down there and, and he's going to be the closest school to the Mountain West, to the West Coast. USC, UCLA come in unless they bring in other schools with that, which you never know about that. So he should be able to get into Southern California because, he's going to be able to go to kids, be like, oh, USC, UCLA didn't want you. We'll come play at Nebraska and we're going to play them and, show them what's up. So that will help with the footprint. And then Midwest, he'll be able to find big, strong linemen and running backs and all the different things. And he kind of runs from what I remember at Baylor, he's definitely not an Art Briles coach. He's going to be much more on the Luke Fickell, Jim Harbaugh side of things in life. So, like, I think, again, it fits the culture of the Midwest. It fits the culture of the Big Ten. And I think he could do some good things there with some. So I don't think, I mean, Frost just lost the room there. And yeah, he lost a lot of close games, as we all know, but he lost all of them. And, this is going to be different. Some of these close games, Nebraska's going to start winning some of these games, and they're going to be hard out for anybody because they're going to have a mindset, they're going to have a culture, and, they're going to be a tough team to beat.
Yeah. Maybe Scott Frost could come to Ohio State, be like the quarterback coach or something there, get his feet back underneath him.
He called a great offense down in Oregon, and he was a hell of a head coach at UCF. I don't know. Maybe that is the play caller I need. I don't know. I'm sure that would freak Buckeye fans out. Something fierce if he was brought in for to be an offensive coordinator. But
all I know is I hope Rule doesn't somehow flip Dylan Raiola. I don't see any reason why he would, but his dad, I mean, he's a legacy to Nebraska. But if he didn't commit to, Scott Frost, that was Nebraska's quarterback, I'm not sure he commits to Matt Rule. So I don't know if they're worried about
I don't think there's anything.
Man with
I don't think there's anything necessarily to worry about there, unless if some Ohio State fans would get their wish and Ryan Day would be shown the door over the next 2 years. But we won't hit that so much today.
Not yet. No.
Yeah. Obviously some stuff to talk about, definitely we'll talk about that here in a little bit when we get to the playoffs.
So what other coaches?
So Herman, he went to, what was it, FAU or FIU or
FAU, which that's where Lane was previously, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a good fit. I mean, it's good. He's a great offensive mind, gets to Florida, can give himself kind of a second life in the coaching business. I think it's a good move for him.
Yeah.
Didn't get too deep into, too big of a school or anything. So,
even though he was rumored to go there a lot, I was really surprised about Auburn ending up with Hugh Freeze. It just kind of seemed like the conference did not want him there. And
he's a good coach.
He's a good coach. He definitely, he did very well at Liberty. There was obviously some questionable stuff at Ole Miss, but you know what? He was whatever happened there.
You think Saban just hangs him up now?
No.
It's like Saban's like, screw that guy. He beat me 2 years in a row at Ole Miss. Everything he did is legal now. Forget it. I'm done.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Nick will have
oh my God. Are we going to talk about him looking like a friggin' wet pup?
Once we get into the playoff stuff, we'll talk about it.
That was pathetic.
But yeah, so that happened there. The big one was today. Everybody was the Dion sweepstakes. Where was he going to end up going? He ended up Colorado.
Weird fit.
It's a weird fit because, this is not my idea, and I forget who said it. It was some media guy, but he said that the southeast, the Boulder, Colorado is not the southeast of the United States, and just didn't think Dion's going to be a good fit at all for there. But and then he kind of came in. And they taped it, his first talk to the team, and basically said they could all leave.
Get the hell out. There's the goal.
But as we'll talk here in a couple minutes, he's going to have a lot of opportunities to bring in a lot of guys that might want to be, a splash with Dion in the transfer portal. So, that's a possibility. I don't know. It's a big name. Let's see what he does. I don't know. He might be starting off in the Pac-12, but he might end up in the Big 12 if the Pac-12, implodes on top of if the Big 10 decides to go grab a few more schools. Colorado and Utah and those two Arizona schools are kind of being eyed at by the Big 12 if the Big 10 comes in and crushes the north of the Pac-12. So,
I honestly, Dion's kind of like on the urban path right now. I mean, with the pro football pedigree behind it, but
yeah,
I think Dion's only there for 2 years, and then he's going somewhere that's more of a powerhouse, blue blood, maybe not blue blood, but modern day college football factory. So
Yeah.
I don't think he's there long. He'll get a big job.
Yeah, I could definitely see him, and if he does well in Colorado, I could definitely see him somewhere in the SEC or the ACC. That kind of seems like a fit of where he'd want to go. But he's a big name. So I mean, I'm definitely interested in watching. Obviously the Pac-12 has god awful, TV rights and stuff like that. But if they're on big TV networks next year, I mean, I definitely will have a station dedicated to them a couple of times because I'd want to see what they look like. So, I mean, I guess that's out of anything that helps the situation there. And then the last coach I wanted to touch on, as we found out today, Coach Kevin Wilson, the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, tight ends coach. He's taking the head coaching job at Tulsa. So, congratulations to him. I figured he was going to find, kind of find his way back into a job somewhere.
You shocked it's been 6 years for him?
Yeah,
I guess he left Indiana with controversy, so I guess it does take a little bit longer to get back to being the head coach from there. But
yeah, and we don't know how necessarily how serious he maybe was looking. I mean, yeah, the Indiana, he ends up leaving a bad taste in his mouth. He leaves, so maybe on that side of it, he doesn't have as many schools looking at him. So you might be kind of in the mindset, well, I'm not going to a MAC school. I'm not going to a Division I AA school, and kind of build up my pedigree some. I'm fine at Ohio State. They're paying me good money. I'm not the head coach, so I don't have the stress of being the head coach, on my back. So I think there's probably a lot to it. The one thing I wanted to ask you on that was, do you think that this was fully his decision, or Ryan did I know like this has been like, it feels like 100 years in 1 week right now, because we go from what happened against Michigan to making the playoffs. So, and Ryan Day said after the Michigan loss that there is going to be some big changes coming, or changes. So like, was this kind of one of the changes that he kind of told? Do you think he told Wilson, like, if you get an opportunity, you should just take it, because I kind of want to change some stuff up on the offense, and it'd be a good opportunity for you, and it'd be a good opportunity for us to get maybe a couple new voices in here. I mean, or do you think that this was just squarely on Wilson, that they came to him and maybe he read the writing on the wall and he's decided to take it?
Kevin Wilson's a part of the game plan, but Kevin Wilson doesn't call the game. And I'm not sure he's going to call the game as a head coach at Tulsa. But I think the further, it got away from Urban and the more it's gone today, I think Kevin Wilson's been less and less involved with the offense. And that's not who he is. He's an offensive, people might say it's dated and he's not an offensive genius. At a time, Kevin Wilson was one of the best offensive minds in college football. And I don't think that's left him, because the style he played at Oklahoma still translates to today. So I don't think, how he coached at Indiana, I don't think that's an outdated system. I think it would still be successful. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it was just he was becoming less and less a part of the offense, and that's not him. He still wants to have his, his footprint be there. But I think Dave probably said, we are going to start having to go in a couple changes with our offense, and philosophically it doesn't really match, what you're trying to do, or schematically it doesn't match what you like to do. And they probably just amicably just decided that, if he got a head coaching job and it was right for him, he was in Oklahoma for years. So if it was the right job for him, go take it. So no fault to him, and the people bashing him saying like he sucks or whatever. He hasn't done anything, the last couple of years. I mean, yeah, I think Cade Stover at times, and sorry to throw his name out there, could have blocked much better at the end of this year. But I think when the tight ends have got an opportunity, for the most part, since Kevin Wilson's been there, they've performed.
Yeah. Like, I mean, going off of that, and I did see some of that too. Some people were giving him a hard time for the blocking and stuff like that. And to be fair on that, I mean, you could kind of throw that shaded Heartline too, because I've seen I've seen a regression in the blocking from both our tight ends and our receivers that, I mean, I remember guys like, Paris Campbell and, Terry McLaurin, like putting guys on their butts and, like,
Well, I mean, there was one play. It was in the Michigan game. It was a toss. It was that 3rd and 3 toss to Chip Trainum that Stover held his block for a whole like quarter of a second, and Marv came over. And I don't know if Marv, like, I think it was supposed to be a one-on-one Chip and that outside guy, but Marv completely missed him. He went and got the inside guy, and in the world I remember, Terry McLaurin, whether that was like his assignment or not, Terry would have taken both those guys out. Like, I mean, and so I mean, what's the saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Like, Kevin Wilson can only tell his tight ends how to be in position. He can't help it if they hold a block for a millisecond. Like, that's not his fault.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just my thought on some of that. I saw some of that stuff, and I did see some of the people saying some stuff about what the offense looked like. I mean, this is Ryan Day's offense. It's not Kevin Wilson's.
Did they not get Ryan Day calls the plays? I mean, like, I thought that was a well-known fact.
They probably did, because I'm sure last week they were complaining that Ryan Day needs a play caller. So, like,
I mean, right? Everyone's saying he needs to be fired for the plays he calls, and yet mysteriously today, Kevin Wilson's the play caller that doesn't know what Kevin Wilson doesn't call the plays. Yeah. Ryan Day's the play caller.
Yeah. Kevin Wilson, might give him a couple suggestions, but he pretty much just tells them from the booth where they're at.
Right, exactly, yeah. Ryan does it all. I mean, I've heard from multiple, outlets from the beat that Kevin Wilson doesn't have much to do with the game or with the play calling on game day.
Yeah. So
he helps come up with a game plan for the team they're playing.
Yeah. So best of luck to him. I hope he's successful at Tulsa. Obviously there will be some, names that come up and stuff. I don't know how much we really want to get into the speculation, because probably try to, spend the majority of the rest of our time on the playoffs. But obviously
stuff to talk about. I mean, well, that'll all shake up and take form here in the next couple, weeks or whatever.
So we'll probably hear some, rumors and stuff like that. They kept the Knowles stuff secret last year for as long as they could. So, I don't know. Obviously, it's going to either be from promotion or they're going to bring somebody in to take Wilson's spot. But somebody's coming in, because whether somebody gets promoted up, unless they promote, one of the assistants up also.
Corey Dennis, offensive coordinator, play caller.
You're going to give me... I'm going to have a stroke, man, so stop. I've been bouncing back and forth over the last week between optimism and pessimism.
I'm in such a dark place most days, Mike. I don't like I feel good for like 3 minutes out of the hour, and the other 57 minutes I'm just bitching and going down the rabbit hole of what's happening to Ohio State football.
Yeah. So let's not talk about Corey Dennis getting a promotion. That might be enough to do it for me. I don't know.
Just call it a night right there. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just you want to hit anything else before we quickly get to the transfer portal? Because I mean,
we got craziness. A lot. We got a lot to talk about. Let's move.
All right, portal. So as of the last time I checked, there was over 1,000 kids in the transfer portal. So is this going to be a thing now? Is this now Portal Monday? We have Black Monday in the NFL when the coaches start getting fired. Is this Portal Monday after the championship games are over that everybody's going to be jumping in? I mean, you got some big time kids in this portal. I mean,
well, I just read Drake May. They're expecting that he's going to leave UNC.
Yeah. So you got Tony Grimes. You're possibly getting Drake May. You got what Brockenheimer or whatever you say his name from Alabama.
Yeah, Brockermeyer.
Yeah. So he's a five.
Were they the twins?
I don't remember, but yeah, he's a 5-star tackle. They have a 5-star tackle from Stanford. That 5-star linebacker, Flo or
Justin Flo, right? They got a 5-star linebacker from Oklahoma. His name escapes me right now. Desai McCullough, high 4-star linebacker from Indiana. He's in
we had a kid this morning who went into the transfer portal from Cal, like a top-level linebacker from Cal, who just got 17 tackles last week against UCLA, and 2 hours later, he committed to UCLA. So,
is that right?
Yeah. So yeah, UCLA obviously liked him enough. Like he kicked our ass all over the field, so let's bring him on. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like it's nuts, and like to a point now, it's like, and I saw this from a couple people online and stuff like this, but I mean, this is almost to like the point is like there's gonna be kids that are not gonna be making football teams. So like some of these kids like really cost themselves. So it's like I think going forward, I think they're going to learn a lesson this year, but going forward that they're probably going to have to be like, if you're kind of like on the, you're right there at the end and maybe you don't like the fact that you're on the third team and stuff like that. Maybe you just accept that and you just be like, I want my college paid for because like
right. Yeah.
You could be put in a situation you've been in a school for 2 years. Nobody's seen any film on you. Nobody remembers how good of a star you were 2 years ago. And now you might not even make a team. So like, I mean, it's just nuts to me.
I mean,
like, how many kids today? It was like every other minute. It was like, well, this kid's down there's 9 kids from Clemson went into the transfer portal. Like,
I mean, it seems like there's 10 already from Alabama. Like
DJ. I mean, for DJ.
Yeah. Right. I know the number one, well, I think end of the day, number 2 quarterback in the country from the 2020 season. And obviously we know how his career has gone, so we don't need to harp on him or anything. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tough lesson to learn, but man, it's like, for as much as, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave overshadowed Jameson Williams when he was here, he was still on the field, It wasn't like he was just riding the bench, not getting opportunity. Like he was still, they used him a very specific way. Just take the safety with you, run. If Justin wants to launch it to you, he will. It would have been great, if he would have stayed around last year. Again, I always said I don't know how much it really would have helped us because we still had the other 2 guys, but it would have been great to have him. But at least he was on the field for Ohio State. You saw what he could do. He was a gunner on the special teams. He was, one of our outside receivers. But if your ass isn't starting at Ohio State, you're not, or playing at Ohio State, you're not going to play at Alabama, like,
yeah,
like these kids, you got to get a reality check here. Yeah, I mean, from Ohio State, what Jalen Johnson was in.
Taraja.
I wanted to ask you, because I thought about this a little bit earlier today, and I didn't want to forget to bring it up. That 2018 linebacking core, was that just the biggest miss on evaluation ever, or was that just the worst development by Al Washington? Like, who do you even blame for that? Bill Davis or Al Washington? Combination of both? Like, who screwed that up?
I mean, Bill Davis is not there much with them, so like I can't necessarily blame him.
Like they come in with him, right? Like
but I don't think he's necessarily like. I have a feeling that's more Schiano and Urban that are bringing them in because he wasn't really a great. Davis, from everything we heard, wasn't really somebody that really liked to go out and recruit. So I have a feeling that's more Schiano and Urban that pulled those guys in. They're legitimate players. I mean, they were 2 5-stars and a 4-star or whatever, and like
maybe 1 5-star, 2 4-stars. I don't know, but they were good.
They were all, and the 4-stars were on the brink of 5-stars. I mean, they were all top level players, and so I just think I don't know. They obviously, and I don't know if they were just. I don't know if it's the coaches after them, like. I ended up really liking Pete Warner. I didn't like him at first. I did end up liking him. I love Browning. I thought he was in the wrong position for
always was in the wrong. Why they tried to force that guy to be this superstar, like freak athlete, middle linebacker? Just put him on the edge and let him like blow people away with his athleticism. Like there was no reason that it's like. I don't even know. I mean, it's like they saw, Micah Parsons and 20 or whatever. Like, oh, he could do that. Like,
and I think they blew a lot of Warner too until Hafley got there and really started seeing that there's different things we can do with him. We can push him back to safety and switch him up and between him and Fuller and stuff like that. I don't know what it was about Borland that everybody fell in love with. I just never did. And,
I think Pete really took it upon himself to make himself the best, to really push himself between years 2 and 3. Like,
yeah,
between 18 and 19, I mean, that guy turned into a monster. I mean, his neck was like this big, like it was, he upped just, I think, the intensity of how he was approaching the game.
yeah.
And look, it's carried over to the NFL.
Yeah. So I don't know who blew that. I don't know if maybe they weren't just not the players that they should have been. I disagree with that. I think that they had the talent. They were all good high school football players. They just were not developed correctly, in my opinion, and that just hurt them at the end of the day. I think they got lost behind some of those other linebackers in front of them, and maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe a couple of them should have been given a couple more opportunities, especially in that 2020 season. But COVID could have did part of that stuff too.
Yeah.
They were. I mean, we've talked about that before, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse on that one. But so I don't know. It's on paper right now. That's probably like the worst. I would have to imagine that's the worst linebacker recruiting class that they've had, because none of them did anything. So
as a whole, that recruiting class is just one of the biggest like friggin' swings and misses ever, man. There were so many of them that just didn't pan out, or like, I guess like Teron Vincent now is playing well, but I mean, 2018 to 2022, man, that's a long time.
Yeah, no, definitely agree. All right, speaking on the portal, though, I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier when we were kind of going over stuff we wanted to talk about tonight, but I definitely feel like Ryan Day, who's gotten some players through the portal they've gotten some, you think about Jonah Jackson and, Ruggles. I mean, they've gotten kids, to transfer in that have done
Justin Fields and Trey Sermon.
Justin Fields, Trey Sermon, So they've gotten some big time players. I think he really kind of needs to find a good balance and be a little bit more aggressive with the transfer portal. Recruiting's still important because that's where you're going to get the heart and soul of the team is recruiting. But when you kind of look like what modern college football has turned into, either these guys are going to the NFL in 3 years or they're transferring out of your program. Right. So you got to have a balance. It's like, you got to try to replace. You got to get some older kids into the program that have been somewhere that can kind of create a balance, because if that is your only situations that they're gone in 3 years or they transfer out, you're going to get multiple situations like they had last year where they're just incredibly young, and so that's not a rebuild or reload type. That's a rebuild type, and we always at Ohio State, you kind of want to be on a reload, and that way you got to get some players in here and there's obviously some big names in here. So he's got an opportunity as the head coach of Ohio State to pull some of these kids in and, see where they play see what they can do next year, and it's good competition for the young kids that they're bringing in and the kids that are going to still be on the team. But we need that. We need a couple more boots in the arm and on a couple more soldiers in here. So
yeah, I mean, and that's it. Just where you're going to be weak, you're going to be so thin in a couple spots, either so thin or so young. Like you have to aggressively attack this, and it doesn't have to be every year to be this aggressive, but you still got to be aggressive with it in modern college football. But you have to bridge what you have to what you can recruit or what, to develop those guys. Cause I mean, you got nothing in your cornerback room. You got nothing in your offensive tackle room. Like these are real concerns. Like,
seems like
you don't want guards playing tackle. Like, not ideal. Maybe in the Big Ten, but not in big games.
Yeah. And you seem like, you're going to be, seems like that there might be one of the 3 edge rushers that we thought they were going to get in recruiting that they could get. Maybe one now that we might not get any of them. So it's like, and I know you still got Sawyer and you got, Tuamala there, but you got to build in some depth after that. I mean, Zach Harrison's going to be gone. Baptista's going to be gone. So that's like, you got to add some more depth back into the program there. So, you're going to have to hit that position too.
Yeah. I mean,
And there's some big linebackers out there. When you think of like Jaxon and stuff like that, if they could go get him, I think that they might be able to make him into some sort of a third down rush end and in situations.
Well, he's already doing a good job, Indiana with it.
Yeah. So there's both players, both defensive ends that have been playing defensive ends, and that those hybrid linebacker types that are in this portal right now that they could probably go after and get you some more rush ends on the field, edge rushers.
Yeah, I mean, if they screw up this, and I know it's really tough. Like Ryan's in a really, really weird place because I know people weren't happy with how the Michigan game went last year, but now you're getting part of the fan base like loudly turning on him, and it's like it's a really rough time. And we'll talk about the playoff, but you got early signing day, bowl prep, all this transfer portal crap. It's all lining up with each other, and he's got to find a way to be a rock star and balance this while recruiting. At the same time, I said early signing day, but he's got to figure out like, how do I live with no sleep? Because he's gonna,
yeah.
I mean, I don't envy him. It's not a position I would want to be in. I mean, that's, it's awesome to coach Ohio State, but like he's got to figure out a way how to navigate through all this stuff because they screw this up and, and we'll talk about the playoffs. I mean, we're not going to break down anything today, but they go get their, the doors blown off of them in Atlanta. You fall apart on your signing day. You don't get anyone from the transfer. I mean, I'd say, get Pantoni and Marotti out of there too, because the guy's got to step up. And I mean, Day's definitely, he's the general, man. He's leading this.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of pressure. I do think I saw Birmingham mention something about this earlier. I do think it's so stupid that they have the transfer portal before early signing day. They should push that behind early signing. Maybe they should coincide, after the season's fully over and when you have to pick if you're going to go to the draft or not. Maybe they should do draft declarations and transfer portal all at the same time. And that
why can't it be after bowl season? Like,
when you have to declare for the draft. So make it, season's over, if you're going to the NFL, you're declaring. If you're transferring out, you're declaring. You're doing those all together, so the teams all know who they're all losing at the same time. Because you're not only losing kids here at the portal time, you're trying to get signing day. Then you're going to have kids declaring for the NFL, here in a few weeks. That is like, so. I mean, it's just crazy. I think that they probably could have did this better, but hey, they could have did NIL better, and that's what happens when you have an NCAA that keeps on kicking shit down the road.
Why? I mean. Why do you need to see a season for early signing day? Why can't early signing day be in August?
Yeah, I don't. Who knows?
I mean, I guess
why can't we go back to one signing day? Like,
right?
February was a fine signing day. Like they could do transfer portal now and then have the signing day in February. They got to reorganize this somehow.
I don't know how these coaches can live, like with especially the ones that still have something to play for in December. Like you're trying to get your team ready to go win a national title and you got to worry about all this other shit on top of it. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And that's only going to get more stressful here in the next few years when they go to 12 teams. So it's like, there's going to be more teams in this position. So yeah, no, this is absolutely nuts. I
mean, who knows? Maybe that mitigates it a little bit because maybe guys are still playing for their team. They're not going to, transfer, but
yeah, that's true. But I mean, the start of the playoffs is going to be up a couple more weeks. I mean, it's going to be mid-December, so like that's going to be closer to signing day. Like, so like I mean. What are they going to do there? They have to move some of this stuff back. And what's crazy? It kind of helps the 4 teams they get to buy because they get to be like, well,
right.
I can go pick up kids in the transfer portal and when these other teams, they're all practicing to play a football game. So like, there's a lot of craziness in there. All right. Speaking
Jaxon
of
Smith-Njigba first.
Well, speaking of playoffs, so some people were talking about, would Jaxon Smith be back? Would he be healthy? Could he come back and play? Ryan Day was asked about that the other day when they made the playoffs. He said we would have an update on that in a couple of days couple days later, one day later, Jaxon Smith is getting ready for the NFL draft. So he is not going to play in the playoffs. So that's heartbreaking. But again, like, I don't want to try. I know a lot of people, I mean, there was a couple stupid fans that went at him, but most people were, pretty much wishing him good luck, a little heartbroken and stuff like that. I'm trying not to beat myself too much about it. I mean, we've played so much now without him that, like, you can't assume that somebody's going to be back that hasn't played I mean, he's literally played a couple plays pretty much the whole year. So,
right, exactly.
So you can't beat yourself up when, he was not really there to begin with for the years. So, obviously I hope he gets the hamstring in order. I hope he looks good at the combine, and I hope he does good. I hope he gets drafted in a good position, makes good money, and shows himself in the NFL, and hopefully he gets a few contracts out of it. And that's pretty much where I'm at. Wish the best for him.
Yeah. I mean, same sentiment for me. I think it's been a Band-Aid on the team that just needed to be yanked off, and it's been kind of been hanging there way too long this season. I think probably the team had a better feel a couple weeks ago that he wasn't coming back this year, but I think that left all the fans kind of like hanging there, which whatever. I mean, they don't owe anything to the fans to let them know who's playing or not. But in the same sense, there was always this like allure, like, oh, once he's back, everything's going to be solved and we can't run our offense because he's not there. And in reality, I mean, you should have just moved on from him and, been more public about it and I don't know what the team was doing. I mean, I'm not in the meetings, but it just feels like everyone was under this impression that it's like it was a magical save on whatever was going on with the offense. And in reality, if that's what really was going on, that you didn't know how to run your offense because, this component wasn't there anymore, or you were trying to, replicate him with another player, when in reality, just, simplify your offense a little bit more, move forward with the guys you have and call what they do well. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I said, I feel like the team had an idea for a while about this, but it was just something that, it's been drama that was hanging over the team. But not Jackson's fault whatsoever. And they stopped talking about it. And I think that's the reason why, because everyone was making such a big deal about it. They thought maybe it would go away. It didn't go away. Ryan said, a couple days. He didn't wait for it though. One day, and it was announced. So Hurts, he's a great player, of course, 100% healthy. He helps us out tremendously in those games, but you move on without him now. And now you don't have any stressor whatsoever. It was just one day into bowl preparation, and then you move on.
Yeah. The worst thing to me about this whole situation, and, I saw a couple of people saying today that, he's always going to have that Rose Bowl game that he did for Ohio State, but in the era of new modern college football, I think that game's going to be forgotten in a few years. And like, people still talk about the 96 Rose Bowl. I don't think the people are going to talk about this Rose Bowl that long because it's not what gets people going anymore. You got to be in the playoffs, so they're going to move the whole team playoffs. And it's kind of sad to think of because he had such a great game, but it's going to pop up every now and then when you see the all-time or, the single game, receiving record and stuff like that. But how often does that pop up unless somebody gets close to beating it? And, and I think it's going to be maybe in 10 years or 5 years or whatever, there's somebody's going to be like got 200 yards receiving or whatever, and they're going to pop that up there and feel like, oh yeah, Jaxon Smith did do that game. And I remember that game. That game was awesome. And but
30 years down the road, old Mike, old John, remember Jaxon Smith-Njigba season?
Yeah, it's just,
I know.
And that's what sucks. And that's what's sad because that should be remembered. And because that was a hell of a game by him. And I just think that as the bowl games get less and less remembered, if you're not in the playoffs and stuff like that, you kind of are going to forget about it. And, whereas in, you think about the runs that Zeke had, and you're never going to forget about those when you think about that.
Yeah.
But it's just a whole different thing now. And, that kind of, that kind of sucks when you think about where college football is going, but, things change and you got to kind of move with the times with it. And, so yeah.
The one thing about JSN though is, I mean, I have no doubt in my mind, he's going to be signing a couple NFL contracts. So his legacy will continue to grow. He'll, be a great player on Sundays, and people won't forget where he comes from. But it is, it is a complicated and sad legacy leaves behind at Ohio State just because it wasn't completed.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Hopefully nothing bad just happened. Our recording just restarted, so.
Oh.
Well, we'll see. Maybe there's a time limit now, and we'll get 2 videos. Oh well, we'll have to keep pushing through, and we'll see what happens. So.
I don't know. We'll have to use something different.
Yeah.
Onto Zoom. No more Skype.
Yeah, I don't know. That was just weird. I just noticed it. All right. So, playoffs. So, USC lost, and we kind of all felt pretty good after that. Ohio State was definitely getting in, and they're in now. So they are the number 4 seed. They're going to play Georgia. It's going to be in the Peach Bowl. It's going to be the 8:00 game on December 31st. So, hopefully, Hopefully, this is not a recap of 2016 when it was sad going into the new year. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, Michigan and TCU are the earlier game. That game's going to be at 4. So,
just before we get into this, like halfway through the first quarter or end of the first quarter, I don't even really remember how it all played out. But when it's like 17-3 USC, man, and Caleb Williams is just moving the ball like he is, did you just think, oh, it's done? Like, I thought they were going to blow Utah's doors off in that game. And it was the absolute opposite, man. Utah kicked their ass.
Yeah. No, like that series that Utah ends up, that next series or whatever it is that they score to make it, get back into the game. Then I'm like, then Williams starts getting hurt and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, they could, because he at a point he couldn't run anymore. And it was just like, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be able to do this. And Utah's a tough team, man. And we saw that
out for sure.
We saw that last year. I mean, they are a physical team. I still don't get how Kyle Whittingham has not been hired by somebody like, how the hell
it out there, man.
I mean, I get it, but with all the coaching openings you've had over the last, since he's been the head coach there, like he's had some really good teams, and it's like, why isn't this guy not become a head coach, at a bigger program?
Likes it out there.
Like I could have seen this guy being a force to be reckoned with in the Big Ten. Like, my God. Like,
oh hell yeah, the way he coaches, yeah, no. I mean, that would have been scary. I mean, I know Harbaugh's, got Michigan coming around, but damn, I mean, could you imagine him coaching Michigan? Like, those were bloodbaths for years.
I mean, even the teams in the West. I mean, I know you think about like
sure.
Iowa,
he would have been great at Iowa.
Yeah, the way they coach defense and stuff like that, and he would actually have had a real offense.
He incorporates his tight ends. I mean, they would have loved him at Iowa.
Yeah. So no, he's the real deal out there. But yeah, so just a surprise of that. I like his little touch at the end of the game. You're welcome, Coach Day. That was kind of funny. So, that got us in. So, TCU then lost to Kansas State. So that was the big question, whether, would we move up to 3 and then they do us get the rematch in the semis, or, would they, put us against Georgia? And, I kind of felt like it's, they were down 8, and, Duggan, which basically took that drive that he ends up, they tie the game on. I mean, he puts the whole thing on his back. And so I kind of felt at that point that they were in the playoff for sure, win or lose. And I was starting to think that I'm like, well, they probably held on to number 3 because they weren't going to award Ohio State for not playing in the final weekend. But Ohio State was definitely getting in. I know some people were complaining about that, but at that point, who was left? Like,
there was no argument there. And like, I'll talk about that here a little bit more in a little bit, but Max Duggan, man, like if TCU loses by another score, like I think if they would have lost by 10 or more, Ohio State's 3. I believe that.
Yeah. And there's a part in that game where it kind of seemed like Kansas State might have been taking it over a little bit. And I'm just like, there was a point Vegas odds had both TCU and Alabama at the same equal odds of making the playoffs. And I'm just like, I was watching it with our dad, and I'm like, this is becoming a part in this game where, Alabama's now knocking on this door and that they could get in the playoffs. I'm like, it's going to be hard. I'm like, if TCU loses by a few scores,
yeah,
it's going to be hard to, it's going to be a lot of pressure on the committee saying that TCU deserves to be in, when you be like, we could literally have a Georgia Alabama semifinal and a Michigan Ohio State semifinal. It's already a hard day of the year for us because of New Year's Eve, and we're going to put those two games on New Year's Eve. We're going to blow whatever ratings we've ever had out of the water.
That's true. I never even really considered that, but yeah, that would have saved whatever ratings meltdown they could have. I mean, having Ohio State, Georgia primetime, that's definitely going to be beneficial for the ratings. I mean, I don't see that game flopping at all. I've always hated the New Year's Eve playoff games, though. I mean, I just feel like that sucks. I hate when that happens.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So, but then, so now we know what that is. What do you think? I mean, we're like, I want another shot at. I definitely want another shot at Michigan. I want to beat Michigan, and so obviously, if they would have just did it in the semifinals, you rip that Band-Aid off right now. But at the same time, I kind of think it's. I think that this could be an opportunity for Ohio State if they come in and play the game, because they can't even think about Michigan. You got to be Georgia 100% from here till Georgia. But, Georgia and Michigan are very similar. So it's not like, when you think about like when Ohio State beat Alabama, then they go play Oregon. I mean, those are two different teams. And, you kind of had to get ready for Oregon's speed and stuff like that after a very physical, Georgia game. Now, this is going to be, or Alabama game. This is going to be a very physical Georgia game. So I'm not going to say that Ohio State's going to be at 100%. Going to play Michigan, and if it is Michigan in the finals, and if Ohio State wins, but you're at least not having to change a lot in the preparation, because you just prepared for, a Michigan style team. So, that helps in the situation, and you can kind of be ready for Michigan just by, that the same type of physicality is going to be there. Now it's just your rival that you owe him 2 years worth of revenge over. And that, I don't know. So I think this will help them keep them focused. Where on the other side of it, TCU is not going to be the easiest out in the world. If TCU stays in that game, and they don't let Michigan establishes themselves like real early on them, and they can stay in and they can stay. They're both great second half teams. If they can stay in the game and don't let Michigan overwhelm them in the second half, and that's a game in the fourth quarter, that might be a situation where, Michigan's kind of looking ahead. Are we playing Ohio State? Are we playing Georgia? They don't know. They think they're walking to the national championship game, and, TCU, there could be a situation in there where that could be an upset.
I'll tell you what, that's one of the last quarterbacks I want to see in a close fourth quarter game. So they better hope they put TCU away, because that dude's a friggin' warrior, man. Like, I don't want anything to do with that guy in a one-score.
Kansas State beat him up. Like, it was like watching Caleb Williams get beat up. Just he was still able to run.
That looked like Rocky Balboa going against Ivan Drago, man. Like, that was
he was bloody and broken.
Bad shape. What I'll say about this, how it plays out, I wanted the revenge. But I think I feel like you do that, the team you want to prepare more for is Georgia, because they're the best team. They're number one. So I think preparing for Georgia is the best step. I don't think, Michigan, I feel like Ohio State still would have been favored over Michigan, honestly, on a neutral site, like a point, 2 points, whatever. That it's still, Michigan would still be playing like They still don't respect this thing. And this, you're a touchdown underdog now. That doesn't happen to Ohio State very often. So gives you all this time to prepare for them. You kind of have prepared for Georgia light with Michigan already, but you get to be loose. Like, you already have this stuff in the back of your mind, but now you get to just work on improving your team, just being better. You don't not got to stress about being perfect, stopping these guys, showing everyone that you're the toughest dudes on the field. Like, you just got to play fast, and you can do all right against them. I'm not going to say, today that Ohio State's going to beat Georgia, but I think it helps that you get the more preparation for the better team. And then the team that you've already prepared for this year, you play in 10 days. Because I think even going into Michigan, like, if you played them now, it could have been like Clemson again. And this isn't saying that Ohio State would have beat Alabama in 2020, but you beat them, but it's an emotional, just, high letdown, whatever it might be. Then you get to Georgia right afterwards, and it's like, well, we've accomplished our mission, man. We got that monkey off our back. We beat Michigan. Bam! Now you get your shit kicked in by Georgia. So I think this is actually the route you want to go. I know not everyone wants to hear that because they wanted to beat Michigan, but you had to beat both of them anyways. So this is the best route, I think, for Ohio State.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with all that. So, it's not going to be necessarily, trying to think on whose path is easier. I probably would say that Michigan's path.
Okay, but who do you think has the easier game, Michigan or Georgia? Like, who do you think has the bigger chance that they could get upset in this?
I think Georgia's probably got the bigger chance to be upset.
So did Georgia get screwed then? Because shouldn't they be rewarded for being number one?
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think Ohio State probably deserved any higher than 4. So it was like a weird situation on that, because I've seen a lot of people, and this is going to play against Michigan, because this is going to motivate TCU some. There's already people that come out, national media guys, have said that, shouldn't TCU be 4th? I mean, Reese Davis grilled, the commissioner of the chairman, and he's like, if Ohio State and TCU played on a neutral site, Ohio State would be the favorite to win that game. And, shouldn't Ohio State be 3rd and TCU be? And I mean, I thought the chairman, I think he answered it pretty well. He said, hey, they kind of both had a very similar situation, being down 8. One closed the gap and tied the game, and even though they lost it in overtime, and the other one didn't. And that's kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of a very simplistic way to be able to grade them at the end of the day, to say which one was 3rd and which one was 4th. So, like, and I actually like that answer from him. I'm like, well, that's actually a metric I can get behind. Like, you guys were both down 8 points, and one of you guys showed up, but the other one didn't at that point. So, like, I like that answer.
I can't remember who it was in. It was Bobby Carpenter was talking about it, but I can't remember what it was. It was about, like, I think of like Max Duggan fighting to keep him in the game or something. He's like, is Warrior quarterback a metric now that we go by? I didn't know that. And it's so true. They just make this crap up as they go. It's like, I mean, they just talk out of both sides of their mouth every single year. It happens. Like, they don't know what they're doing. It's just, I mean, here's where I am with it. Ohio State was a top 3 team the entire year. And I know they backed into a double-digit win against Maryland, but they beat everybody by double digits up until Michigan. It was a 1-score game against the number 3 team in the country, and they didn't finish with 8 minutes left. So, yeah, I mean, it looked so bad. Even St. Nick was on, Fox, which, why would Fox ever try to, like, why would they let, when they want 2 of their teams in the playoffs, why would they let this guy politic on their halftime show? I mean, it made no sense, but he looked pathetic out there, man. Like, talk about good wins and bad wins. Like, I mean, it was a bad loss. Don't get me wrong, but you got nothing to hang your hat on, Nick. Like, you beat Austin Peay the second to last week of the season. Like, unfortunately, that's when Chicken Shit Saturday comes back to bite you in the ass. Like,
well, he was like, and it was like, and then I saw him before they, before they did the selections. Like he's on talking about that too, and I forget like the one guy that was down there with him. I can't think of the embedded reporter. Yeah, him, and he
one.
Yeah, and he's like, in Alabama, he's like, he's talking about, he would be favored against a few of these. So he took shots at both TCU and Ohio State because I think the shots, like, well, look, one of them lost really bad at the end of the day. That was obviously a shot at Ohio State, but I think what he was saying,
a bad team, didn't he?
Yeah, when he was said
4-loss team.
Yeah. So and then he was like, and they, the other one would be, he would be favored again. I think that was definitely a shot at TCU because Alabama would not have been favored against Georgia or Michigan. And I think that probably would be a 3-point swing either way against Ohio State, in my personal opinion.
I think Alabama would have been an underdog to everyone besides TCU.
And that's a fair point. Like, I think that could very easily be. And, so that's kind of my thoughts on that. So yeah, I thought it was kind of pathetic. Honestly, the one that should be kicking themselves biggest in the behind was Dabo for not switching to Klubnik earlier because, one loss in an ACC championship game, Ohio State would have never have overcome that. So,
right.
So like everybody that was complaining about Ohio State backing in, Alabama was behind them, Tennessee was behind them, and Penn State was behind them. So like literally you have 4 teams in a row that none of them are playing in that final weekend. So
no one's a conference champion. The other, they all have 2 losses,
and those 3 have 2 losses where Ohio State has 1 loss. So it's like, there's only one team that was deserving of it at that point. So like anybody can say what they want, but it is what it is. I mean,
yeah. Could you imagine if he played against South Carolina? I mean, they win that game probably easily, and then Clemson's in the playoffs.
Yeah. So, yep, that was the biggest one that probably kicks themselves in the butt. It's that one. So, but yep.
Yeah, I wonder how that kid will do. I mean, it's kind of like outside of Deshaun Watson, Dabo's quarterbacks have always gotten just a little bit worse, each year that they're with him. So hopefully that wasn't his time to strike gold with Cade Klubnik. I don't think it was. I mean, the kid's a really good player. He outshone Quinn Ewers all of their senior season. So, or junior season. Because he's a true freshman, right? Quinn's a sophomore, but they were the same age, and then Quinn reclassed. Yeah, he was better than Quinn when they were in high school. I mean, even though Quinn had the monster cannon arm, but kid beat him everywhere they went. So he's a stud. He's a stud.
All right, so just real quick, because obviously we're going to do the actual breakdowns in the weeks to come. Just our just early thoughts. Like, what are we thinking that Ohio State, just big picture stuff coming into this playoffs? I mean, this is a lot for Ryan Day. We kind of talked about this earlier because, if he gets the chance to play Michigan, like, I don't think the Ohio State fan base is going to take any loss. I don't care if it's a 1-point loss, like that. You need to win that game. And like I said last week, if you did get somehow into the playoff, that, I don't care if it's on a, if you look bad the whole game, but somehow it's close and you win on a last second Hail Mary, like, you got to win the game, Right. I think it's more palatable to the fan base if they lose a close one to Georgia, but they can't get their butts kicked at the same time. And, and even the loss, a close one to Georgia, there's still going to be the people that have now switched sides and they're done with Ryan Day. That's just giving them more ammunition within the fan base. But I think a few more, if they lose to Michigan and or get blown out anywhere in this playoffs, they're going to be
bad.
There's going to be a lot of situations where it's not going to be. It's going to be a lot of anger I'm not going to say the majority of the fan base, because I think the majority of the fan base are always going to be pretty cool with the head coach. They want to win.
Yeah.
Obviously he's a winner and stuff like that. But there's going to be it's going to be a lot larger of a minority than it currently is. That's going to want Ohio State to cut ties. and and they're not going to cut ties. It's $56 million buyout. I mean, you would literally need your biggest boosters to come in to help you do that. So it's crazy to even talk about it because I don't even think Gene's there yet, even with a bad performance. But a bad performance in this playoff, a loss to Michigan in this playoff, there's not going to be a lot of rope left for Gene. He might actually be in a situation where after next season, if God forbid they lose to Michigan again, he might be in a weird position next year where it's like that. I don't know if that rope is going to be long enough for Ryan Day to hold on, where he might be in a lot of pressure, Gene, to make a change at that point, and so.
And that's when Gene says, Ryan, you get offered an NFL job, you're taking it. Yeah. Okay. So initial thoughts. I mean, you're going to have to play the best game that you've played all year, obviously, to win this game, to have a chance to win this game. Any of that, sideline to sideline bullshit or bubble screens or stretch runs, they're not going to work. You're going to get your doors blown off if you try to do that stuff. You can't. You got to go vertical whole game.
Yeah. If you want to go watch things, if you haven't watched Georgia's defense play, and people could say last year's defense was better. I don't care. This is still the best defense of the country.
Right. It's still the best defense in the country, though. That's
and it's not like one of those years like when we played Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, and they're like, well, this is the best defense in the country. Literally, they did not have to play Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State this year. So who the hell did they play? So no, this is the best defense in the country, and I get it. They didn't have to play Alabama and on the other side and stuff like that, but they're damn good. And, somehow Stetson Bennett, which, he was a Heisman finalist, which is mind-boggling to me because
CJ's a Heisman finalist. Wow. We forgot that one, but
so,
or he was supposed to be anyways.
Yeah. So no, you have to be ready to play the game of your life. And this is
Bennett was a punchline 2 years ago, man. I said he was an accountant, and that guy is one of the just hardest playing quarterbacks in college football.
Agreed. That's not enough to win the Heisman Trophy. And so
no, I don't. I mean, I think he should.
I hope to God he doesn't, because any of the other three, and I know there's
Williams, right?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would like it to be Duggan, just from what I saw. And I didn't get to watch a lot of TCU games this year, but it seems like that was pretty much a common thing for him since he became the starter.
Yeah.
That so I hope it's him. But depending on how many votes were taken prior
Stroud better not back into winning the. I mean, I don't want to sound like that. I hope Stroud wins the Heisman. I just don't think he didn't separate himself with the numbers. That
I don't want to. I don't want him having the. I want him to be completely 100% disrespected going into the Georgia game, because that's what we need.
Right.
Cardale Jones was Cardale Jones in those because people thought Ohio State had no chance, and the kid had talent, and he put it all on his shoulders, and they had a hell of a game, a hell of a playoff from Zeke, who also put it all on his shoulders.
Right.
So and that's the type of mindset that they need to find. I would talk to every single coach that was on that team. I'd have Cardale come in and talk to the kids, literally, Urban, Tom Herman. I don't freaking care. Call Luke up. They need that mindset that won that playoff. That's what they need in this playoff, because it's the whole world is going to be against them. It's literally Ohio against the world. And if they don't come in with that mindset, Georgia's going to kick their ass. They literally, I
hate saying it, but yeah, I mean, if he's getting scared, playing conservative, kicking field goals, or slowing the game down, I mean, there's no time for it. There's no time for that crap. You're built to be fast. Be fast. That's, you're built to throw on people, but you don't have time to do 4 or 5 reads, whatever it is, and that one's on CJ. If you don't see something you like on read number 2, read number 3 is you move your freaking feet, man, and you get going.
Because if you're not moving, you're getting sacked. And
right. I mean, if you get to read,
you might not even get to read 2. So no, seriously,
you're gonna get hit anyways. You might as well go get some yards with it.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So they have to. I mean,
I don't want to be pessimistic about it, but you got to play your best game.
Oh, I'm not trying to be pessimistic either. I've had some mixed emotions this week. I'll be pessimistic if they don't look great in the playoffs, and we'll talk. That will be after the playoffs because there's going to be a lot of critical talk that needs to be had. But right now, I want them to win. I want them to be national champions. They have the talent that they should be able to compete and win national titles. So this is the perfect opportunity for them. They have the ability to win this all. But if you go out there I mean, I'm not even saying that this year's Michigan game was awful. I felt it was a better game than necessarily. I felt it was a better game in situations than last year's Michigan game. You didn't get pushed all over the field, like you did. But where last year they weren't necessarily physically tough, it was like they weren't mentally tough this year. On some of this, it felt they were undisciplined and they gave up gap integrity. They blew routes and blew tackling, and Georgia. It's the best tackling team in the country. I was watching they barely miss a tackle, and they know how to tackle correctly. So that's why they don't miss tackles. They don't run into guys. They literally go run and wrap up on somebody and take them down. So
last year's national title game, I was so impressed with those two teams playing each other. Even Alabama, that I don't think necessarily has had that defense, the last couple of years like that. Oh, that's Alabama, because that's kind of Georgia now, because Kirby went over there. That's kind of Georgia's defense now. But just how fast those guys explode through their target and wrap up and tackle and just tackle through people, not just like this nonsense like grabbing shoulder pads or running into them with their shoulder and the people bounce off. They just know how to wrap up and go through a guy. And it's an art that a lot of teams don't have anymore. I think Michigan's pretty good at it. Georgia's really good at it though. But to kind of go back to what you were talking about with the Michigan game, it wasn't even like you said, at times it didn't feel as bad as last year. So here's where I'm at. Last year, you got totally beat up, pushed around the field. This year, you could have just snuffed them out in the first quarter and you were too scared to do it.
yeah.
You could have killed that team.
Yeah.
And I realize how it turned out. I'm not saying or some Michigan fan stumbles over here and be like, oh, could have killed us. We beat you by 3 scores. They could have put them out of the game in the first half. They didn't. Yeah. It was Ohio State's fault. But no one's saying it. It wasn't the refs. It wasn't the weather. It wasn't some fluke this, that, or whatever.
No, you can't keep a second half team like that in the game when they're a good second half team.
And they got good players,
and you had opportunities in the first half where you really could have got up onto them. That 7-3 score, they could have they went right down the field on them again. They could have made that 14-3, and at that point, that's a much harder game for Michigan. Separating the scoreboard is where Michigan's going to have difficulties. If a team starts climbing up on them,
right?
Scaling up, that's where Michigan has a hard time. Possibly. Coming back in a game, and and to me, that's just how I feel about it. I mean, until Michigan, I know they haven't been really put into a major hold this year, but until they show me that they could come back because their game plan is never built that way. But it's a good thing they don't ever let other teams get them out of their game plan. So they've been, it's that's winning football right there. And so Ohio State, which a lot of times Ryan Day has gotten out of his game plan. He comes up, goes right down the field on Michigan, and then he gets really tight for no stupid reason. And it's just why don't you literally just go do what you just did on the first series? Run the exact same plays in the exact same order and see if they can stop it.
Ryan, did beating Clemson by 21 not feel good?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like he unlocked this part of him, and then it's no, once he gets punched in the mouth, he kind of gives up. I don't.
Yeah.
He's like, let's just take this into the fourth quarter. It's we don't need to. You've got talent all over this field. Just try to score on them.
And for what I saw, probably going to be last point, and then we'll try to get out of here because but LSU was able to throw on Georgia, and especially when that new quarterback came in, and so.
And they scored 30 points, man. It wasn't all just empty yardage. They put up some points. I know they gave up 50, but
yeah, but like you said, just you got to challenge these corners down the field. to keep their safety backs, and you might be able to establish enough of a running game against them. It's going to be hard. Georgia's very good against the run, and they got some big bodies on their defensive line, so it's not going to be easy to push those guys around. But you do got to show somewhat of a running game, but you can throw in these guys. So throw in these guys, challenge them down the field. They didn't do that enough against Michigan. It seems like they've went away from that a lot. You don't have Jaxon Smith to do all the the sideline to sideline, running great routes in the middle of the field and screwing safeties up and stuff like that. You don't have that right now. So you got Marv, who is a beast. Throw a lot of 50-50 balls up to him, and let's see if the Georgia corners are ready to play ball. With arguably, except maybe Tennessee, I would say Marv's probably the best receiver that they've played all year. And think so. Challenge them up down the field. Let's
Keely Ringo's a big guy. Like those corners, the big corners don't always have the most fluid hips to stay with guys. So I'm not saying he can't, but like you said, you got to try it.
And maybe rotate Ballard in more with Fleming, because that let's see. Even if you don't throw it to him, just to freaking run corners and safeties off, that maybe something opens up underneath that you could get big time yards out of. That challenge these guys. Challenge them down the field. And Stroud. The one thing he was really great last year, that the one thing that has really struggled with at different times this year, is that he used to know when his guys were breaking open last year, and he just threw it up. And they weren't out of their breaks yet, and he just knew where they were going to be. And and maybe these guys aren't the best route runners necessarily in the world, like what those guys last year were. But if Marv Harrison is running even with some dude, throw it 5 yards out in front of him, because he's going to come down with it, just like he did against Michigan.
Right.
And, so let these kids go out and make plays for you.
Yeah, and I do think there's a part of like a chemistry he had with JSN last year that, they really could cook in the RPO game. Like they could.
That's fair. It's fair points.
And I don't think he's found that yet with anyone else. But like I said earlier, like to bring this back to where we were, 30 minutes ago or whatever it was, like pull the friggin' Band-Aid off, man. You got to figure out what you can do, and you just do it. Like, you don't have Jaxon Smith-Njigba. You haven't. So don't try to run his offense. Run what you can with the guys you have.
Yeah, exactly. All right. You want to hit anything else tonight, or are we going to get on out of here?
We're like an hour, 20 minutes in. I think we've been angry enough today. There's anger, there's happy, there's a little bit of everything in this episode. So I think it's a good time to get on out.
I'm glad they made the playoffs.
It's much better than any alternative.
I would not
like seeing young guys. I don't want to see a scrimmage in Miami.
Yeah, I don't want to play Clemson in Miami. I wanted to play. I've been saying when I thought we were going to a bowl game, I'm like, I don't care about this conference affiliation crap. Put us in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. I'll give them the Sugar Bowl. I beat them before in the Sugar Bowl. So let's go play them in Alabama and New Orleans, and let's have at least a fun game. Even though probably both teams are going to be either in the transfer portal or sitting out. So maybe we'll be talking next week when a team has to forfeit because they have too many guys in the transfer portal. Because some of these teams, my God.
Oh my, what? I don't know if it was yesterday. It must have been yesterday, because I feel like it was like a definite thing. Some guy on Twitter was like saying how JSN and CJ Stroud both probably weren't going to play in this game. I'm like, JSN's injured, yes. I'm like, if CJ Stroud doesn't play in a national semifinal where his team's still alive for a national title, then I'm really going to have to start believing when people say the culture is ruined over there, because there's definitely something screwed up if CJ's sitting out for the draft.
At that point, we would just be sucking up that we are gluttons for punishment, and this would become Browns bar talk.
You got to paint the wall behind you.
Yeah,
Brownie,
Like if these guys are just if these guys aren't going to play in semifinals, I'm just going to watch the pros from here on out. Like,
yeah, absolutely. But I'm good to get out of here. We've hit on a lot tonight, so
yeah, big data dump tonight. But I guess we weren't expected to be talking as much about the playoffs, and I was not expecting over 1,000 kids to go into the transfer portal today.
That's ridiculous. So
yeah. Alrighty, let's go.
Best luck to Kevin Wilson. I think he'll coach the bowl game. But yeah, thank you everyone for stopping out tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.